In the quiet, snow-draped town of Riverbrook, a single act of cruelty lit a fuse that would blaze across the nation. Officers Barnes and Kyle, smug in their badges, targeted a homeless black veteran at the Red Rail Diner, never suspecting they were poking a sleeping giant. How could they know Eli Turner's military ties stretched straight to the Pentagon's highest ranks? One brave waitress's trembling phone call unleashed a torrent of justice, ripping open a chilling national conspiracy against homeless veterans, toppling corrupt police forces, and transforming communities from sea to shining sea. Those cops, carelessly tossing Eli's dog tags into the icy snow, thought they were bullying a nobody. They didn't realize they were awakening a warrior, a man who'd faced terrors far worse than their cheap intimidation. Could their arrogance spark a revolution? Snow fell in soft, relentless waves, cloaking Riverbrook's hushed streets in a pristine frosty veil that sparkled under the streetlights. Few souls dared the bitter cold, scurrying from glowing shop windows to their cars, shoulders hunched, steps quick against the biting wind. Yet Eli Turner moved through the chill with a steady, unhurried stride, as if the winter's bite couldn't touch his iron resolve. His old military jacket, threadbare but spotless, hung proudly on his broad shoulders, a faded U.S. flag patch stitched with care, a quiet badge of his service. His pants were frayed, boots cracked from years of endless trudging, but his bearing radiated a dignity that defied his tattered look. Eli's breath clouded the frosty air, his low voice murmuring mantras from a soldier's past. Check the exits. Spot the threats. Stay sharp. These words, half prayer, half memory, anchored his mind, keeping him vigilant in a world that seemed hell-bent on casting him aside. How could such strength shine through such hardship? Ahead, a neon sign flickered through the snow, Red Rail Diner, open 24 hours. Its warm glow spilled through frosted windows, silhouettes of diners savoring hot meals dancing inside. Eli's stomach growled, a sharp pang of hunger reminding him of his struggle. His veteran's assistance check, meager but precious, had landed yesterday, and tonight, he could finally afford a real meal. He paused at the entrance, brushing snow from his shoulders, straightening his posture like a soldier facing inspection. 3 days he'd spent huddled in an abandoned railway station on the town's edge, warmed only by scavenged newspapers and memories of blistering desert heat. 3 days without the comfort of 4 walls. Could this humble diner offer a fleeting moment of peace? The bell above the door jingled as Eli stepped inside, a rush of warmth and the rich aroma of coffee and sizzling food wrapping him like a long-lost friend. He closed his eyes for a heartbeat, savoring the sensation, letting it thaw his weary soul. But when he opened them, the diner had fallen eerily silent. Conversation stopped mid-word, forks froze above plates, eyes darted to him, then skittered away in unease. A young mother clutched her child tighter, fear flashing in her gaze. An elderly man fumbled nervously with his wallet, slipping it into his pocket as if Eli might snatch it. The sting of rejection, so familiar, cut like a knife, but Eli stood tall, choosing an empty stool at the counter with clear sightlines to the front door and kitchen exit, instincts honed in battle, etched into his very bones. Just passing through, he murmured softly, almost to himself, just craving a hot meal. Could he find even a whisper of kindness here? Rachel Miller, only 23 but wise beyond her years, had worked at the Red Rail for nearly 2 years, scraping together savings for community college while cheering on her younger brother's dream of becoming a police officer. She knew the look of the downtrodden, but something about this man's eyes, clear, piercing, carrying the weight of 1,000 battles, stopped her heart. She glanced toward the corner booth where officers Barnes and Kyle lounged, nursing their coffees, their Tuesday ritual a heavy shadow over her shift. Barnes caught her look, his eyebrow arching as he nodded toward Eli, a silent command to watch the troublemaker. Rachel steadied her trembling hands, approaching the counter with a warm voice despite the knot in her stomach. "Can I get you something, sir?" she asked, sliding a worn menu his way, her pulse racing. Why did those officers always make her feel so powerless? "Coffee, please. Black." Eli replied, his voice deep yet gentle, its clarity catching her off guard. "And whatever's the special today, if it's not too much trouble, ma'am." Ma'am, not honey or sweetheart like the regulars tossed around. Rachel's lips curved into a small genuine smile as she poured his coffee, the dark liquid steaming in the mug. "Meatloaf with mashed potatoes and gravy," she said, her tone brightening. "Comes with green beans and a roll." "That sounds perfect. Thank you," Eli said, his gratitude warming her heart as he wrapped his calloused hands around the mug, the heat seeping into his chilled fingers. "Been a while since I had a home-cooked meal." How could such a simple exchange feel so profound? But from the corner booth, Officer Kyle's loud snicker sliced through the warmth like a jagged blade. "Dumpster diving doesn't count as dining out, huh?" he sneered, his voice carrying across the diner, sharp and cruel. Officer Barnes chuckled darkly, piling on. "Better keep the silverware count, Rachel," he jeered. "And check the bathroom after he leaves. These bums always shoot up when they get somewhere warm." Eli didn't flinch, his gaze fixed on his coffee, but a subtle tightening around his eyes betrayed the sting of their words. Rachel's face burned with embarrassment, her customer service smile plastered on, masking the anger bubbling inside. "I'll put that order right in," she said to Eli, her voice strained as she turned toward the kitchen, desperate to escape the tension. How could they be so heartless? "Thank you, ma'am," Eli repeated, his calm unshaken, a quiet defiance in his steady tone. But Kyle wasn't done. He stood, stretching with exaggerated swagger, his mid-30s linebacker frame softened by years of complacency, his smirk unsettling as ever. He sauntered to the counter, claiming the stool beside Eli with deliberate menace. Barnes, leaner, sharper, with eyes like a predator's, followed close behind, taking the stool on Eli's other side, boxing him in. "Hey, Rachel," Kyle drawled, leaning close, his voice dripping with mockery. "How's that brother of yours doing at the academy? Still planning to join the force?" "He's doing great," Rachel answered, her tone carefully neutral, though her stomach churned. "Top of his class in marksmanship." "Good man." Kyle nodded, his eyes sliding to Eli's profile. "We need good officers, ones who understand what it takes to keep a community safe. You know what that means, right? Keeping the dangerous elements off the streets, the druggies, the panhandlers, the so-called vets who use their service as an excuse to beg and harass honest folks. Could their cruelty know no bounds?" Eli sipped his coffee slowly, his silence a shield against their venom. "You'd be surprised." Barnes chimed in, his voice cold and cutting. "How many of these homeless heroes never saw a day of real combat? But they sure know how to work the system, don't they, Kyle?" "Damn right." Kyle agreed, his sneer widening. "Real soldiers come home, get jobs, contribute to society. Not like these parasites." Why did their words feel like daggers aimed at the very heart of compassion? Rachel returned, her hands trembling as she set Eli's steaming plate before him. Meatloaf, mashed potatoes, green beans, a warm roll. "Can I get you gentlemen anything else?" she asked the officers, desperate to shift their focus. "Nah, we're good," Kyle replied, then grabbed a sugar packet, tossing it onto Eli's plate with a mocking flick, landing it beside the meatloaf. "Here you go, buddy. Earn your keep. Danse for your dîner. Isn't that how it works for you people?" The diner fell deathly quiet, the air thick with tension. Patrons shifted uncomfortably, a teenage boy in a back booth quietly pulling out his phone to record. How could such cruelty unfold in plain sight? Eli set his coffee down with deliberate care, his movements slow, precise. He picked up the sugar packet between two fingers, turned in his seat, and placed it gently back on the officer's table, his gaze steady, unyielding. "I earned my dignity in Kandahar," he said softly, his voice slicing through the silence like a blade. "And I don't need to earn it again from you." The words hung heavy, a quiet rebuke to their hate. Kyle's face flushed a furious red, and Barnes' hand twitched toward his holster, danger crackling like lightning. "You threatening an officer, vagrant?" Barnes hissed, his voice low and menacing. Could this moment erupt into chaos? "No, sir," Eli replied, turning back to his meal, his calm unshaken. "Just having dinner." But Kyle wasn't appeased. He shot to his feet, his stool scraping harshly against the floor. "I think you need to leave. You're disturbing the peace," he barked, looming over Eli. Eli didn't budge, his voice steady as stone. "I've paid for this meal, and I intend to eat it." Barnes stood too, his cold eyes narrowing. "Leave," he snapped. "Or are you supposed to comply with a lawful order?" The threat was unmistakable, their authority a weapon. Why did justice feel so far away? Rachel stepped forward, her heart pounding like a war drum, her voice trembling but firm. "Officers, please. He's not causing any trouble." "Stay out of this, Rachel." Barnes cut her off, his tone icy as the snow outside. Unless you want trouble, too. Your brother wouldn't like his big sister messing with police business, would he? The veiled threat struck like a punch, chilling her to the core. Rachel stepped back, her face pale, but her hand slipped into her apron pocket, where her phone was already recording, capturing every cruel word. Could her courage tip the scales? Kyle grabbed Eli's shoulder roughly, his grip bruising. On your feet now. Eli stayed seated, meeting Kyle's gaze with unflinching calm. I have the right to finish the meal I paid for. I haven't broken any laws, he said, his voice a quiet challenge. Disturbing the peace, failure to comply, threatening behavior. Barnes rattled off, his voice dripping with disdain. That's 3 strikes, buddy. Around the diner, more phones emerged, silent witnesses to the escalating injustice. No one spoke, no one dared intervene. How could a simple meal become a battlefield? 3 tours in Afghanistan. Eli said evenly, his words heavy with truth. 2 Purple Hearts, a Silver Star, and I can't even eat in peace in the country I served. The weight of his sacrifice hung in the air, a stark contrast to the officer's cruelty. Kyle yanked Eli's arm hard, nearly dragging him off the stool. Save the sob story for someone who cares, hero, he sneered, his grip tightening. As they began to forcibly haul him away, Eli's gaze locked onto Rachel, his expression resigned yet resolute. If something happens to me, he said clearly, ensuring she heard, call General Whitaker at the Pentagon. Tell him Eli Turner's in trouble. Could this desperate plea be his lifeline? Rachel's eyes widened, her mind reeling. Was this man delusional, claiming ties to the Pentagon? Barnes barked a harsh laugh. Yeah, and I've got the president on speed dial. Let's go, Turner. They dragged Eli toward the door, his feet barely grazing the floor, yet he didn't resist, his dignity unbroken despite their brutality. Back to your meals, folks. Kyle called over his shoulder, his voice smug. Just taking out the trash. The diner's door swung open, a blast of frigid air sweeping in as they hauled Eli into the night. Rachel rushed to the doorway, her heart hammering, watching as they slammed him against their patrol car with vicious force. Eli grunted, pain flashing across his face, but he stayed silent as they patted him down roughly. How could such injustice unfold in broad view? The chain around Eli's neck snagged on Barnes's watch, his dog tags clattering to the snowy ground. Kyle smirked, deliberately stepping on them, grinding them into the ice before kicking them aside. Oops, he taunted, shoving Eli into the back seat. Guess you're not such a hero after all. The cruiser's door slammed shut, the engine roaring to life as the car vanished into the swirling snow. Rachel stood frozen, shivering in the doorway, her breath catching in her throat. Could she do something to stop this nightmare? After a long, heart-wrenching moment, Rachel darted into the parking lot, her boots crunching through the snow. She searched frantically until her fingers closed around Eli's dog tags, half buried in the ice. The cold metal bit into her palm as she brushed away the snow, revealing the embossed words, Turner, Elijah J., Methodist. Her phone, heavy in her pocket, was still recording, capturing every second of the officer's cruelty. With trembling fingers, she stopped the video, her heart racing as she unlocked her phone again. Please don't be crazy, she whispered, her voice barely audible, a plea to the universe as she prepared to make the call that could change everything. Could her courage spark a revolution? In the dimly lit employee bathroom of the Red Rail Diner, Rachel Miller stood trembling, her heart pounding like a war drum as she stared at her phone's glowing screen. The Pentagon's main number taunted her, daring her to act. Was she really about to call the Pentagon for a homeless man she just met? The idea was insane. She'd be laughed off or worse, scolded for wasting their time. Yet Eli Turner's piercing eyes haunted her, his quiet dignity unshaken even as Officers Barnes and Kyle dragged him away into the snowy night. The cold weight of his dog tags, now tucked safely in her apron pocket, pressed against her like a sacred duty. Just do it, she whispered fiercely, her voice quaking with resolve, her finger hovering over the call button. Could one trembling call ignite a revolution? The line rang 3 agonizing times, each chime stretching her nerves to the breaking point, until a crisp, professional female voice answered.
Department of Defense, how may I direct your call?
Rachel swallowed hard, her throat dry as desert sand. I need to speak with General Whitaker, please, she stammered, her voice barely holding together. It's about Eli Turner, he's in trouble. A heavy pause hung in the air, and Rachel braced for dismissal, her heart sinking. "One moment, please," the voice replied, calm and efficient, sending a jolt of hope through her. She expected a click, a transfer to nowhere, but instead, a series of rapid clicks and muffled transfers echoed through the line. A new voice, stern yet curious, broke through. "This is Colonel Reynolds, General Whitaker's aide. Who am I speaking to? Could this really be happening?" "I'm Rachel Miller," she blurted, her voice quivering with urgency, clutching the phone like a lifeline. "I'm calling from Riverbrook, Pennsylvania. Eli Turner told me to contact General Whitaker if he was in trouble, and he is. 2 cops just arrested him, and I'm terrified they're going to hurt him." Another pause, longer this time, stretched like an eternity, Rachel's pulse thundering in her ears. She heard faint voices in the background, urgent whispers she couldn't decipher.
Miss Miller, please hold for General Whitaker.
Reynolds said, his tone sharp with authority. Rachel slumped against the cold bathroom wall, her legs weak, her mind reeling. Had she just stumbled into something far bigger than she could imagine? Then a deep, commanding voice filled her ear, resonating with power. "This is General Harold Whitaker. You have information about Sergeant Elijah Turner." How could a small-town waitress reach such a towering figure? In Washington, D.C., retired General Harold Whitaker sat at his polished mahogany desk in a wood-paneled office, the Potomac silver glow shimmering through the window. At 72, his silver hair gleamed under the soft lamplight, his back ramrod straight, his piercing blue eyes as sharp as a hawk's. He was sifting through briefing papers for a Senate Armed Services Committee meeting when the call pierced his focus like a bullet. The moment Eli Turner's name reached his ears, the world stopped. His face transformed, polite curiosity giving way to a fierce, almost primal intensity. "Tell me everything," he barked, his voice a thunderclap, already grabbing a second phone to rally his forces. As Rachel poured out the story, the diner's cruelty, Eli's arrest, the officer's brutality, Whitaker's jaw clenched, his knuckles whitening around the receiver. How dare anyone lay a hand on a hero like Eli? By the time Rachel's trembling voice fell silent, Whitaker was on his feet, pacing his office like a caged lion, fury radiating from every step. "Miss Miller, you did exactly the right thing," he declared, his tone resolute, a general issuing orders. "Send me that video recording now. My aide will text you a secure number. Then go home, stay there, and don't breathe a word to anyone. Is that clear?" "Yes, sir." Rachel gasped, relief flooding her like a warm tide, tears pricking her eyes. "But what about Eli? Will he be okay?" Her voice cracked with worry, her heart aching for the man she barely knew. Whitaker's tone softened, a rare warmth breaking through his steel. "Sergeant Turner is one of the finest soldiers I've ever commanded," he said, pride swelling in his chest. "And I always take care of my people." Could Eli's fate rest on this one man's ironclad promise? As the call ended, Whitaker stood frozen, his mind hurtling back 20 years to a blistering day in 2003. The heat in Kandahar was suffocating, dust choking the air as their convoy snaked through a village's narrow streets. Intelligence had warned of Taliban activity, but the eerie silence was deafening. Then boom. The first RPG slammed into the lead vehicle, flames erupting in a roar. A second blast obliterated the rear, trapping them in a deadly ambush. Bullets rained from rooftops, windows spitting fire. Whitaker, then a colonel, was hurled from his Humvee, his leg crushed under its burning wreckage. "Fall back," he'd shouted, urging his men to save themselves. But Staff Sergeant Elijah Turner refused, his young face smeared with blood and grime, his eyes blazing with defiance. "No man left behind, sir," he yelled, voice cutting through the chaos. "Not today. Not ever." How could such courage shine in the heart of hell? Under relentless enemy fire, Turner rallied his squad, orchestrating a daring counterattack that stunned the insurgents. His bravery carved a fleeting window to free Whitaker, dragging him to safety through a hail of bullets, then charging back into the fray to rescue 3 more wounded soldiers. Only when air support roared overhead did he stop, his body battered but unbowed. Now, Whitaker snapped back to the present, his heart pounding with gratitude and rage. He seized his secure line, dialing a number etched in memory. "This is General Whitaker. Authorization code Sierra Echo 94 Alpha," he barked, his voice ironclad. "I need immediate intervention at the Riverbrook Police Department in Heed, Western Pennsylvania. One of our decorated veterans is being held under questionable circumstances. I want DoD Internal Affairs on site within the hour. Could he mobilize the might of the Pentagon in time to save Eli? Whitaker didn't stop there. He fired off 5 more calls in rapid succession, each to a heavyweight, contacts at the Department of Justice, the Secretary of Defense's office, an old friend leading the Veterans Affairs Administration. "It's about Eli Turner," he said each time, his voice a clarion call that set hearts racing. Strings were pulled, favors cashed in with urgency, the gears of power grinding into motion. The system that had failed Eli for years was now surging to life at its highest levels to protect him. How could one man's loyalty spark such a swift, unstoppable response? Meanwhile, in the cold gray holding cell of the Riverbrook police station, Eli sat on a concrete bench, his eyes closed, his breathing slow and even, a fortress of calm amidst the storm. The chill seeped into his bones, his ribs throbbing where Barnes's rough shove had landed a bruising blow, but his mind was far away. Meditation, learned during his grueling recovery at Walter Reed, was his lifeline, what doctors called a PTSD coping tool, but Eli simply named survival. In his mind, he roamed the familiar halls of a Kandahar palace his unit had secured, every turn, every doorway etched in vivid memory. This mental ritual kept him grounded, a shield against the walls of reality threatening to crush his spirit. Could his inner strength hold fast in this bleak, lonely cell? He didn't stir when the hallway door banged open, nor when hurried footsteps echoed closer. Only when his cell door clanged did Eli's eyes snap open, sharp and alert. 2 figures stood there, a man and a woman in crisp dark suits, badges glinting in the dim fluorescent light. "Mr. Turner," the woman said, her voice respectful, almost reverent.
"You're free to go."
Eli stared, his gaze steady, assessing their intent. "That was faster than usual," he remarked, a faint spark of surprise in his deep voice. "Special Agent Daniels, Department of Defense Internal Affairs," the man said, stepping forward. "This is Special Agent Morales. We're here at General Harold Whitaker's direct request." A ghost of a smile flickered across Eli's face, warming his weathered features. "The old man came through," he murmured, gratitude swelling in his chest. "Yes, sir, he did." Morales confirmed, her tone firm and proud. "We've spoken with the sheriff. You're released immediately, all charges dropped." Could freedom come so swiftly after such darkness? They led Eli through the station, past the booking desk where Barnes argued furiously with the sheriff, his face flushed with indignation. "This is outrageous." Barnes sputtered. "You can't just waltz in here with federal badges." His voice died as he saw Eli striding past, flanked by the agents, his head held high like a warrior unbroken. "Officers Barnes and Kyle," Agent Daniels said, his voice ice-cold, cutting through the tension. "The Department of Defense will review your arrest procedures and use of force against a decorated combat veteran. I suggest you brush up on citizens' constitutional rights, housing status be damned." The sheriff, a heavy-set man with a perpetually anxious frown, nodded frantically. "I assure you, agents, this doesn't reflect our department's values," he blustered, sweat beading on his brow. "These officers will be on administrative duty pending a full review." Barnes paled, his bravado crumbling like ash, while Kyle's eyes burned with raw seething hatred. Eli paused, his voice soft but piercing, a quiet thunder in the room. "The truth doesn't need force to stand," he said, then walked on, his dignity a blazing light. How could such simple words carry such weight? Outside, the snow had ceased, leaving Riverbrook silent and shimmering under the glow of streetlights. Eli inhaled deeply, the crisp air lifting a crushing weight from his shoulders, freedom tasting sweeter than ever. The agents offered a ride, but he shook his head, his voice calm yet resolute. "I prefer to walk, thank you." As they returned to their sleek black SUV, Eli spotted a figure across the street, Rachel, bundled in a thin jacket, hopping to keep warm in the biting cold. When she saw him, she dashed across, nearly slipping on the icy pavement, her face alight with relief. "You're okay," she cried, her voice bursting with joy, tears glistening in her eyes. "I was so worried." She faltered, glancing at the imposing federal vehicle, its presence a stark reminder of the night's surreal turn.
"You made the call,"
Eli said, his gaze warm with gratitude, a quiet acknowledgement of her courage. Rachel nodded, pulling his dog tags from her pocket, offering them with trembling hands. "I didn't think it'd work," she admitted, her voice quivering.
Calling the Pentagon. It sounded crazy.
Could her bravery have saved a hero? Eli took the tags, his fingers brushing hers, the cold metal familiar against his skin as he slipped them over his head, tucking them under his shirt. It always works, he said, his voice steady, a faint smile softening his rugged face. Truth scares cowards. And General Whitaker keeps his promises. Rachel's eyes widened with awe. Who is he? She asked, her voice hushed. How does a Pentagon general know your name? Eli gazed at the starlit sky, clouds parting to reveal a glittering expanse that seemed to hold all his memories. That's a long story, he said softly, and not for tonight. Where will you go? Rachel shivered, wrapping her arms tighter against the cold. I have a place. Eli assured her, his tone gentle but firm. Don't worry about me, but thank you for believing me. Her courage had lit a spark. Could it ignite a fire to burn away Riverbrook's darkness? Rachel hesitated, then dug into her bag, pulling out a paper-wrapped package, her hands still shaking from the cold and the weight of the night. Your dinner, she said, her voice soft but earnest. You never got to finish it. I had the cook wrap it up. Eli accepted it, his nod heavy with gratitude, his eyes warm with a rare, fleeting softness. Kindness is rare these days, he said, his voice low but profound.
Remember that.
With that he turned, his silhouette fading into the snowy night, each step steady despite the weight of his past. Rachel watched until he vanished around a corner, her heart racing with the enormity of what she'd set in motion.
Could one call unravel a web of injustice?
In Washington, General Whitaker made his final call of the night, his voice warm yet urgent as he dialed a number close to his heart. Ava, it's your godfather, Uncle Harry, he said, the familiar greeting softening his commanding tone. Ava Washington's reply was filled with affection, her voice bright despite the late hour. This is a surprise. It's not even my birthday.
I need a favor, sweetheart.
A big one. Whitaker said, his tone shifting to grave urgency. Name it. Ava replied, no hesitation in her fierce, driven voice. I need you to help an old friend. His name's Eli Turner, and he's in a storm. Ava, a renowned civil rights attorney who'd built her name battling police brutality, sat up straighter, her instincts flaring. What kind of storm? She demanded, her mind already racing. The kind that needs your skills to navigate. Whitaker replied, his voice heavy with purpose. Pack a bag. A car's coming in an hour. I have court tomorrow, she protested, her schedule flashing through her mind. This is bigger, Ava. Whitaker said, his tone unyielding. This man saved my life. Now we save his. A brief silence hung, then Ava's resolve hardened. I'll be ready, she said, her voice ironclad. Could Ava's fire amplify Eli's fight for justice? As Whitaker hung up, his gaze fell on a framed photo on his desk, himself younger, standing beside Eli Turner and their unit in Afghanistan, brothers forged in the crucible of war. Hang in there, Sergeant, he murmured, his voice thick with emotion, a vow to the man who'd carried him through fire. The cavalry's on its way. Could this band of heroes right the wrongs done to a forgotten warrior? Eli Turner's piercing eyes scanned the wreckage of Ava's motel room, his heart thundering with the steely resolve of a combat veteran who'd faced far worse than this cowardly assault. The shattered lamps, strewn papers, and missing laptop were more than a violation. They were a gauntlet thrown down by the shield men, a desperate bid to crush their fight. But Eli stood unyielding, his calm a stark contrast to the chaos, his voice low and fierce as he declared, then it's time we fight back. Not their way, our way with truth and grit. Ava's gaze locked onto his, her own fire flaring, her pulse racing with anticipation. What's your plan, Eli? She demanded, her voice sharp with urgency, ready to dive into battle. I need to make a phone call, he replied, his tone steady but electric, a spark ready to ignite a revolution. To an old friend who thrives on unconventional warfare. Could one call summon the warriors needed to topple Riverbrook's corrupt empire? The next morning, Eli stood at a rusty payphone outside a gas station on Riverbrook's gritty edge, the dawn light casting a faint golden glow on his weathered face, his worn military jacket a badge of endurance. He'd insisted on a landline, his old habits of operational security as unyielding as ever. Cell phones were too easy to trace, a lesson carved into his bones from covert ops. His fingers, steady despite the chill, punched a number from memory, each digit a lifeline to a brother-in-arms forged in fire. The line buzzed, and a cheerful voice broke through, bright against the morning's quiet. Q's Tech Haven. We fix what others can't. How can I help? Eli's voice dropped, coded and urgent. The Eagle needs new talents, he said, invoking their Afghanistan recognition phrase, a secret handshake across time. Could this voice from the past reignite their fight? A heartbeat of stunned silence, then an explosion of joy. Is that really you, man? It's me, Q, and I need you. Eli urged, his voice thick with urgency, his heart pounding with hope. Quincy Q. Morales, the genius who'd bent radio waves through mountains and cobbled satellite uplinks from scrap, had lost both legs to an IED 6 months before their tour ended, but his spirit and skills burned brighter than ever. Eli had carried him 3 miles to safety under a hail of bullets, defying Q's pleas to save himself, a bond sealed in blood and brotherhood. Where are you? Q asked, his tone snapping to mission mode, keys already clacking furiously in the background. Riverbrook, Pennsylvania.
Eli replied.
Small town, massive trouble. I know it. Q growled, his voice grim. Those cops brutalize the homeless like it's a game. Give me 6 hours, I'm bringing the cavalry. Could Q's promise deliver the firepower to shake Riverbrook's foundations? True to his word, 6 hours later, a modified van roared into the parking lot of Ava's new motel, Q's Tech Haven emblazoned in bold letters across its side, a beacon of defiance. Ava, shaken by the break-in, had relocated to this low-key spot, using cash and a fake name to slip under the shieldman's radar. Q rolled down the van's ramp in his wheelchair, his movements swift and practiced, his arms rippling with the raw strength of the soldier he'd never stopped being. At 38, his faded Batman t-shirt barely contained his energy, his grin a challenge to the world. Behind him, 3 figures emerged, 2 men and a woman, hauling heavy cases stuffed with cutting-edge gear, their eyes sharp with purpose. Could this band of heroes transform a dingy motel into a fortress of justice? Eli met them outside, and the reunion hit like a lightning bolt. His heart surged as he clasped Q's forearms in their Afghanistan grip, a silent vow renewed, their eyes glistening with memories of battles fought side by side. Still diving into trouble, huh? Q teased, his grin warm but fierce, breaking the weight of years apart. Hoping you'll pull me out again. Eli shot back, his voice rough with emotion, a rare crack in his stoic armor. How could a bond forged in war's crucible feel so alive after all this time? Inside the cramped motel room, introductions sparked like a fuse. Q's team was a powerhouse, Marcus Ghost Wilson, a digital forensics wizard whose intelligence analysis could crack the toughest servers. Brianna Trace Hamilton, an ex-military cop with a nose for lies sharper than a bloodhound's. And Jordan Link Peterson, a cybersecurity genius who'd once shielded NSA secrets before forging his own path. We run a legit tech shop. Q told a stunned Ava and Rachel, his pride palpable, his eyes gleaming with purpose. But our nonprofit's the real mission, helping vets the system abandons, especially when corrupt powers come for them. Could this crew of misfits outwit a sinister network? Is that even legal? Rachel asked, her voice quivering, eyes wide with doubt, her hands still trembling from the threats she'd faced. Trace's smile was razor-sharp, confident yet reassuring. We skirt the edges, but we never break the law, she said, her tone infectious, easing Rachel's fears. We find truths hiding in plain sight. We're digital archaeologists. Link added, his eyes twinkling with mischief, a playful edge to his serious craft. Ava's legal mind snapped into focus, her voice firm as she aligned with her new allies. Evidence is admissible, no matter how much it burns the guilty, if it's legally obtained, she declared, her resolve a shield. Spot on. Q clapped, his energy electric, rallying the room. Let's strategize. Could this team turn Riverbrook's darkness into light? In mere hours, the motel room buzzed like a war room, alive with the hum of tech. Laptops formed a chaotic web, screens flickering with data streams. Specialized gear tapped police radio chatter, and Ghost, with a hacker's finesse, hijacked downtown traffic cams, his fingers dancing over keys like a maestro. First up, secure comms. Q barked, tossing out encrypted phones that gleamed like covert tools from a spy thriller. Untrackable, untappable, use these, nothing else. Next. Trace cut in, her voice sharp with focus. We map the corruption. Who's connected? Who gives orders? Who swings the bat? And finally, Link added, his fingers flying. We follow the cash. Corruption this ugly always leaves a money trail. Their synergy was a wildfire, burning with purpose. Could they expose the shieldman's rotten core? Eli pulled Rachel aside, his voice heavy with concern, his eyes searching hers for any hint of hesitation. This is gonna get rough, he warned, his tone grave, a soldier's instinct kicking in. You don't have to stay in this fight. Rachel's shoulders squared, her gaze fierce, defiance blazing in her eyes. They threatened me, trashed my life, nearly killed Ava. She snapped, her voice trembling with fury, her heart pounding with resolve. I'm in, Eli, and I'm not quitting. Eli nodded, seeing the same grit he'd witnessed in young soldiers facing their first firefight, a quiet pride swelling in his chest. Stay sharp, he urged, his tone soft but urgent. These guys fight dirty. Could Rachel's fire withstand the coming storm? For 3 relentless days, Q's team worked like a machine, tracing the shieldman's digital fingerprints with surgical precision. They snagged emails, dissected reports, matched incidents to records, each bite a clue in a chilling puzzle. On the 3rd night, Ghost's shout sliced through the hum of laptops. We hit the jackpot, he cried, eyes blazing with triumph, waving them to his screen. Encrypted payments to Barnes, Kyle, Captain Brick. Eli leaned in, heart pounding, his breath catching. Who's behind it? He demanded, his voice taut, sensing a breakthrough.
Falcon Core.
Ghost revealed, screens glowing with damning data. A defense contractor funneling cash through shell companies, $2,000 to $5,000 monthly, based on rank. Ava's pen raced across her notepad, her mind whirring. What's their game? She pressed, her voice sharp with curiosity. Could a corporation orchestrate such cruelty? Trace's screen flashed new data, her frown deepening, her voice grim. They're legit security consultants for police nationwide, she said, her tone darkening. But whoa, check this. They're buying up Riverbrook properties through subsidiaries. Eli's voice was a low growl, his eyes narrowing. Where? Link's fingers danced, revealing a map of Riverbrook, dozens of locations highlighted, working-class zones, rental hubs, homeless camps. They're gentrifying. Eli snarled, his eyes aflame with realization. And we're in their way. The truth was a gut punch. Could greed fuel such heartless persecution? While Q's crew dug deeper, Ava hit the streets, her heart breaking with every homeless veteran's story. They came for us on purpose. Diane Miller, an Iraq war nurse, said, her voice quaking with pain, her eyes haunted. Raided our camps, stole our stuff for health violations, told us to be at it. If we resisted, they slapped on bogus charges. Ava's fury boiled, her pen shaking as she scribbled. Where'd they send you? She asked, her voice tight.
Maplewood, Granville.
Diane said, naming towns 20 miles out. Said they had vet services. Lies, just stricter laws, no shelters. Each tale exposed a calculated purge, a campaign to erase Riverbrook's veterans. Could Ava's evidence shatter this injustice? Meanwhile, Rachel's brother, Jameson Miller, took a heart-stopping risk. He agreed to wear a wire during his police academy sessions with Captain Brick, his dream of serving justice now a burning need to expose corruption.
Donne fiche for info.
Ava warned, her voice stern, her eyes locked on his. Just listen, stay natural, they'll spill if they're relaxed. Jameson nodded, sweat beading on his brow, adjusting the wire under his uniform, his heart hammering. I won't fail you, he vowed, his voice trembling but fierce. The recording he returned with was pure dynamite. Barnes and Kyle boasted about clearing trash and bust bonuses. But Brick's words were the real blow. The company wants these properties clean by quarter's end, he told cadets off record, smug as sin. Every vagrant you kick out pads the city's wallet, and ours. Win-win. A cadet dared ask, what if they stay? Brick's reply was ice-cold, chilling to the bone. That's why we've got cells in the old warehouse. Some need convincing they're not welcome. Could such evil be so casual? Rachel, quietly bolstering the team while job hunting, had a stroke of genius that lit up her eyes. People connect to real faces, she said, her voice brimming with hope. What if we film videos about these veterans? Show their service, their pain, their treatment. With Q's tech magic, she crafted mini-documentaries, weaving their heroism against Riverbrook's cruelty. Eli's story launched Thursday night, racking up 1 million views by Friday morning, a viral cry for justice. Could her vision wake a sleeping nation? The response was a tsunami that rocked Riverbrook. Local news swarmed, microphones thrust into faces. Veteran groups roared support, their voices echoing nationwide.
Justice for Eli, Trondhead, a battle cry reverberating online.
The pressure forced Judge William Harmon, who'd buried Shieldmen complaints, into a corner. Ava's relentless grilling, the threat of exposure looming like a guillotine, broke him. Bricks got dirt on everyone, he confessed, hands shaking as he downed his third whiskey, his voice a broken whisper. Cop files, on judges, counselors, shop owners. He'd ruin my family, expose an old affair. So you buried the complaints. Ava snapped, her voice cutting like a blade, her eyes blazing with scorn. I protected my family. Harmon whimpered, his face crumpling. God help me. Could fear justify such betrayal? Each clue honed their plan, live-stream testimonies, covert surveillance, a media blitz to force accountability.
We move fast.
Eli urged, his voice urgent, his military instincts razor-sharp. The more we squeeze, the wilder they'll get. His warning proved true, a dark prophecy fulfilled. That afternoon, as Rachel stepped out for lunch, a police cruiser screeched up, tires smoking. Kyle's smirk was pure venom, his eyes glinting with malice. Rachel Miller, he snarled. You're under arrest for meddling with police and tampering with evidence. Rachel's heart hammered, her breath catching in terror. That's insane, she cried, backing away, her voice shaking. I didn't tamper with anything. Your video begs to differ. Barnes growled, stepping from the driver's side, his face a mask of cold fury. They shoved her into the cruiser, speeding off in broad daylight, ignoring her protests, the busy street a blur. Could they snuff her out so boldly? Q's hacked traffic cams caught the kidnapping live, the grainy feed a gut-wrenching call to action. Eli took charge, his voice steady, eyes blazing with controlled fury. They won't take her to the station, he said, his mind racing, fury tightly leashed. Too public with this heat. It's the warehouse Brick mentioned. They tracked the cruiser to a rotting industrial zone, the car vanishing into a derelict furniture factory, its crumbling walls hiding unspeakable secrets. I need 4 volunteers. Eli commanded, his military training snapping into place, his voice a beacon of calm in the chaos. Combat vets only. This is high risk, but we stay clean, no weapons, no overkill. We get Rachel out, safe. Could Eli pull off this daring rescue against such odds? In an hour, he'd rallied 5 battle-hardened veterans, their skills honed in war's crucible, each one a warrior ready to answer Eli's call. They hit the warehouse from multiple angles, silent hand signals and encrypted radios syncing their assault like a well-oiled machine. Q's thermal imaging gear, a marvel of tech, spotted 2 heat signatures in an outbuilding, one still, likely Rachel, one pacing, probably a guard. Could they save her without sparking a bloodbath, or would this mission plunge them deeper into Riverbrook's darkness? Eli Turner stood at the heart of the warehouse's shadows, his movements silent and precise, a living echo of the legendary squad leader he'd been in Afghanistan's brutal battlefields. His heart pounded with the fierce calm of a warrior, every sense honed to a razor's edge as he led his team through the night. At his sharp signal, 2 veterans sparked a diversion at the main entrance, their shouts and clatter drawing eyes away, while Eli and his remaining pair slipped like ghosts to the outbuilding's rear. The lock on the door was flimsy, no match for the swift skill of his teammate, who snapped it open in seconds. Inside, Rachel Miller sat bound to a chair, a dark bruise blooming on her cheek, her eyes wide with fear but unbroken. Officer Barnes lounged nearby, smug and oblivious, waiting for Brick's orders. Could Eli's team pull off this rescue before the Shieldman's net tightened? Barnes lunged for his gun, but Eli was a blur of lethal instinct. With a single surgical strike, honed disarming insurgents in Kandahar's close-quarters chaos, he sent Barnes crumpling unconscious to the floor. Are you hurt? Eli asked Rachel, his voice low but urgent as he sliced through her restraints with a knife, his hand steady despite the adrenaline surging through him. Rachel shook her head, her breath shaky, relief and fear warring in her trembling voice. "I'm okay." They were waiting for Brick. Kept grilling me about our evidence. As they steadied her, Rachel's hand slipped to her shoe, pulling out a tiny recording device, her lips curving in a shaky, defiant smile. "I never stopped recording," she said, her voice quivering with pride. "Not since they grabbed me." Could this secret tape be the key to toppling the Shield men? Eli's team vanished into the night like smoke, leaving Barnes out cold but alive, their footsteps silent on the cracked pavement. By the time police reinforcements stormed the warehouse, drawn by the diversion's ruckus, Rachel was safe at the motel, surrounded by Ava, Q, and the team, her heart still racing as they replayed her explosive audio. "They admitted everything," she said, her voice steadier now, determination burning through her fear. Kyle said, quote, "No one's gonna believe a junkie or some homeless war freak. We bury people like that." Ava's face was grim but lit with victory, her legal mind already weaving a case. "This, with our other evidence, can crush their corrupt system," she declared, her voice fierce. Eli's eyes met Q's, a silent pact forged in shared resolve. "Then let's bury them instead," he growled, his voice a low thunder. Could their fight finally bring justice to Riverbrook's shadows? The morning after Rachel's daring rescue, the motel command center crackled with tension and purpose, a hive of relentless determination. Eli sat in a quiet corner, his calm a stark contrast to the frenetic energy, his eyes tracking Q's team as they huddled around a laptop, replaying Rachel's audio for the third time. Kyle's voice, cold, cruel, dripping with contempt, filled the room. "No one's gonna believe a junkie or some homeless war freak.
We bury people like that."
Rachel flinched, the bruise on her cheek a dark, painful reminder of her ordeal, her hands trembling as she clutched a coffee mug.
"This is pure gold."
Q exclaimed, shifting his wheelchair, his eyes alight with triumph. "With Jameson's tapes and our data, it's enough to blow this wide open." Ava nodded, her legal mind racing, her pen scribbling furiously. "This blatant targeting of veterans and the homeless? It's a civil rights violation. Add Falcon Corps' money trail, and we've got a RICO case. Could they dismantle a corrupt empire with this arsenal?"
"Timing is everything."
Eli said, his quiet voice slicing through the buzz, commanding instant focus, his military instincts sharp as ever. "We strike before they know how much we've got." The team dove into action, dissecting their haul with relentless precision. By early afternoon, Ghost dropped a bombshell that sent hearts racing. "I cracked their hidden server," he shouted, waving them to his screen, his eyes wide with exhilaration. 3 years of their vagrant suppression plan, memos, quotas, Falcon Corps payouts. It's all here. Trace leaned in, her jaw dropping as she scanned the files. This isn't just Riverbrook. Distribution lists show Shieldmen chapters in police departments across 3 counties. Ava's breath caught, her voice hushed with awe. "It's a nationwide scandal waiting to explode," she said, scrolling through damning evidence. "They're targeting minorities, veterans, activists, all under community stability lies, bankrolled by Falcon Corps." Could this revelation shake the nation? Rachel's voice trembled, her mind reeling. Why? Why would a defense contractor care about small-town homeless folks? Eli's answer was grim, his eyes hard as steel. "Property values," he said, his voice low and biting. "Their subsidiaries buy up cleaned areas cheap, then flip them for millions once the undesirables are gone." The truth hit Rachel like a freight train. She'd seen Riverbrook's diners morph into trendy coffee shops, condos replace modest homes, but never linked it to this brutality. "Jameson was in on this," she whispered, her voice breaking, tears welling. He had to know. Could her brother's betrayal cut any deeper? As if summoned by her pain, a sharp knock rattled the door. Q flipped monitors to a neutral screen, his movement swift despite his fractured arm, while Eli glided to answer, his hand discreetly on the knife at his ankle, ready for anything. It was Jameson, his cadet uniform crisp but his face haunted, dark circles framing eyes heavy with guilt. "I need to talk to Rachel," he said, his voice raw, pleading. Rachel stepped forward, arms crossed, hurt blazing in her gaze. "What now?" she demanded, her heart aching. "Not here." Jameson begged, glancing nervously at the team. "Alone." Eli's head shook, his voice firm but calm. Anything you say to her, you say to us, he said, his presence a quiet anchor. We've earned that trust. Could Jameson face the judgment of this makeshift family? After a tense, agonizing pause, Jameson's shoulders slumped, defeat etched into his young frame. I'm sorry, he said, eyes locking onto Rachel's, his voice cracking with shame. I knew some, not all, but enough to know it was wrong. I should have spoken up. Why didn't you? Rachel demanded, her voice raw with pain, tears spilling down her cheeks. Jameson's gaze dropped, his hands trembling. Brick recruited me straight from the academy, he said, his voice quaking. Said I could go far if I played ball. Then he showed me a file, photos of you, your apartment, your schedule. Loyalty's your career, he said.
Cross US, your family pays.
Could fear excuse his silence? Silence gripped the room, Rachel's anger melting into horror and pity, her heart torn between love and betrayal. Classic intimidation. Eli said, his tone softer than his words, a soldier recognizing a tactic he'd seen too often. They use family as leverage. Jameson looked up, eyes pleading, desperation raw. I thought I was protecting you by going along, he said, his voice breaking. But after they took you yesterday, I can't anymore. I'm done. Ava stepped in, her voice steady, her legal mind cutting through the emotion. We can protect you both, but we need everything, names, ops, places. Jameson nodded, grim but resolute, his jaw set. I'll give you all I know. Could his confession tip the scales? As the day unfolded, the truth crystallized like ice, sharp and unyielding. The Shield men were a shadow syndicate within police departments, purging problem people to clear land for Falcon Corps' greed. Loyal officers got fat bonuses, dissenters were sidelined or threatened. Late afternoon, Eli slipped away, needing solitude to brace for the fight ahead. He walked to a small memorial park downtown, his fingers tracing Malik Johnson's name on the stone wall, his best friend, lost in Kandahar's ambush, a wound that never healed. This time we make it count, he whispered, his voice thick with vow. We finish the mission. Lost in memory, he nearly missed the black SUV creeping past, its driver's stare chilling his blood.
Instinct scrimait danger.
Eli raced back, heart pounding, arriving as police cruisers swarmed the motel, lights flashing like war beacons. Tactical gear stormed Q's setup. Could the Shield men crush their fight? Eli stayed hidden, dialing Q's encrypted line, his breath steady despite the chaos. They're raiding us. Q's voice was tense but cool. Anonymous tip, suspicious computer activity. They're calling us hackers threatening security. Everyone okay? Eli watched cops haul laptops, his heart sinking. They roughed us up. Q said, pain lacing his words. Fractured my arm flipping my chair. Trace and Ghost are fine. They took our gear, but we backed up everything to secure servers they can't touch. Where's Rachel? She and Ava were grabbing food. Eli said, relief sharp. Links with them. Jameson was there, they nabbed him for interfering. Q's voice darkened. Brick's leading this himself. It's getting ugly fast. Stay low. Eli urged. I'll hit backup channels. A hand grabbed his shoulder, he spun, facing Rachel, her eyes wide with terror. They took everything, she gasped. Our evidence, Q's gear. Could they recover from this blow?
Not everything.
Eli said, his calm anchoring her, his voice a lifeline. Q planned for this. This raid proves they're scared. Ava joined, her face grim but fierce, her legal fire unquenched. We speed up, she said, her voice urgent. Rachel's next video goes live tonight. It's gotta show the raid, expose the Shield men, tie Brick to Falcon Corps. Rachel's voice shook, doubt creeping in. Without Q's gear. Link stepped up, a slim laptop under his arm, a tight grin flashing. Always got a backup, he said, his voice steady. I had this when they hit. It's got all we need. Could they turn this setback into a knockout punch? That night, in a vacant apartment owned by Eli's vet contact, they polished Rachel's most explosive video yet, their hearts racing with urgency. It laid bare the raid, unmasked the Shield men, and wove an audio exposing Brick's crimes. Uploaded, It detonated online, racking up millions of views in hours. Justice for Eli trended nationwide, a roaring cry for truth. Local news swarmed, national outlets followed, cameras flashing like lightning. Ava's phone buzzed non-stop, senators, journalists, civil rights groups rallying, their voices a chorus of support. "It's working," Rachel gasped, scrolling through the flood of responses, tears of hope in her eyes. "They're listening. They believe us." Eli's voice was quiet but profound, a steady anchor. "Truth's got power," he said, "especially when it's been buried so long." Could their fight reshape a nation? The Shield men buckled under the pressure, their house of cards trembling. By evening, word hit: Barnes, suspended, offered to testify against Brick for immunity. "He's panicking," Ava said, her eyes sharp, her legal mind plotting the next move. "They all are. Corrupt systems crumble like this, everyone scrambles to save their skin." Could the Shieldmen's collapse be imminent, or would their desperation unleash a darker storm? Eli Turner's nod was heavy with the weight of 1,000 battles, his troubled eyes flashing with a storm of resolve and dread as he spoke, his voice a low, ominous rumble that sent chills through the room. "That makes them more dangerous than ever," he warned, each word a thunderclap of truth. "Brick won't go down quietly, he'll crush anyone he sees as a threat." As if the universe itself conspired to echo his grim prophecy, Q's urgent call sliced through the tense air of their makeshift command center, his voice dripping with chilling news. "Barnes is dead," he roared, the words detonating like a bomb in their hearts. "Found in an alley behind the station, an overdose, they claim." Could such a convenient death be mere coincidence? Awfully neat timing. Q snarled, his tone thick with suspicion, his wheelchair creaking as he leaned forward, fury etched on his face. Especially since there's no trace of the wire he was wearing when he met Brick. Eli's piercing gaze locked onto Ava's, his expression carved from granite, his voice a grim warning. "They're eating their own," he said, the truth heavy with dread. "The walls are closing in, and Brick's tying up every loose end." The air crackled with fear. How could their enemies be so ruthless, devouring their allies to bury their sins? That night, as the team collapsed into exhausted slumber, their bodies drained from a relentless war for justice, Eli sat alone by the motel window, his silhouette stark against the quiet, snow-draped street below. The world outside was hushed, but his heart roared with memories of Afghanistan's chaos and the battle raging now in Riverbrook. His calloused fingers, trembling with the weight of years, dialed a number untouched for ages, a desperate lifeline to brothers who'd stared down death with him. "It's Turner," he said when the call connected, his voice steady yet thick with urgency, a warrior's plea echoing through time. "I need the old squad, all of them. I'm neck-deep in a fight, and it's about to explode." Could his comrades from the past rally to this dire call? A pause stretched like eternity, then a voice, rough with time but blazing with loyalty, broke through. "Just like forward base victory," it declared, summoning their darkest hour in Afghanistan, surrounded, outgunned yet unbowed. Eli's mind hurtled back to that hell. Lish night, bullets screaming, his squad standing firm against impossible odds. "Exactly like that," he confirmed, his voice ironclad with resolve. "We need eyes, ears, boots on the ground now." "It's done," the voice swore, unwavering. "The old squad's coming." Could this reunion spark the fire to burn Riverbrook's corruption to ash? 3 days later, Ava Washington stood at a podium in Riverbrook's community center, her heart thundering like a war drum as she faced a sea of faces, citizens, reporters, cameras streaming their truth to millions across the nation. The town hall she'd orchestrated had swelled into a national firestorm, with people packed shoulder to shoulder, overflowing into the parking lot, all hungry for justice. "Today we amplify the voiceless," she proclaimed, her voice a blazing beacon, resonating in every soul. "Today we blast a searing light into the shadows poisoning our justice system." Could her words ignite a revolution to reshape America? In the front row, Eli sat, his military bearing unyielding, beside Rachel and Jameson, their faces etched with fierce purpose, joined by other victims of the Shieldmen's ruthless cruelty. Q and his tech crew ran the show from a backroom nerve center, their screens pulsing with critical data. "For weeks, we've unearthed undeniable proof of vicious civil rights abuses against the homeless, especially veterans, here in Riverbrook and beyond," Ava declared, her voice roaring with righteous fury. "This isn't about a few bad apples. It's a calculated plot to criminalize poverty for corporate greed. Could this truth dismantle a corrupt dynasty? As Ava's words soared, massive screens behind her erupted with irrefutable evidence. Emails, bank records, memos, each meticulously chosen to nail the Shield men and Falcon Corps to the wall. Across town, Captain Brick staged a frantic press conference on the police station steps, flanked by Kyle and a dwindling loyalist crew, his face twisted with feigned outrage. These wild claims are a vicious assault on law enforcement's honor, he bellowed to a shrinking crowd of local reporters. Elijah Turner's a dangerous drifter, weaving lies and faked evidence to scam sympathy. But his voice echoed in a void, reporters slipping away as alerts buzzed about Ava's earth-shaking town hall. Could Brick's desperate bluster hold against the tidal wave of truth? Back at the center, Rachel stepped to the podium, her heart hammering like a storm, her voice steady despite the nerves clawing at her chest. "I grew up in Riverbrook," she said, her words clear and true, cutting through the tension. "I've poured coffee at the Red Rail Diner since I was 19. I always thought our police stood for us all." Her fingers brushed the fading bruise on her cheek, a stark badge of her courage. "But when I saw Barnes and Kyle brutalize a man for simply existing, mock his service, threaten me for helping him, I couldn't stay silent." Her bravery set the room ablaze. Could one woman stand ripple across a nation? Jameson followed, his police cadet uniform traded for civilian clothes, his young face heavy with solemn duty. "I joined the academy to serve my community," he began, his voice firm yet laced with raw pain. "Instead, I was taught to prey on the weak, fake reports, prop up a system that valued property over people." His voice cracked, shame flickering in his eyes. "I'm ashamed I stayed quiet, but I won't anymore." Could his redemption fuel the fire of justice? One by one, victims poured out their anguish, their voices weaving a tapestry of pain and defiance. A mother sobbed, recounting her teenage sons beating by Kyle for lingering past curfew on their own stoop. An elderly veteran spoke of losing his few belongings under arrest threats for sleeping rough, his voice trembling with loss. A shopkeeper confessed to coerced calls against the homeless, guilt weighing his every word. Each story stacked like kindling, igniting a roaring fire of outrage.
Could these voices stop the Shieldmen's cruel reign?
Finally, Eli rose, his slow deliberate steps to the podium radiating gravitas, his posture rigid with military pride despite the weight of every eye upon him. He paused, his deep, soulful gaze meeting each face, forging a bond that transcended the camera's lenses. "My name is Elijah Turner," he began, his voice a resonant blade slicing through the hush. "I served 3 tours in Afghanistan as a staff sergeant. 2 Purple Hearts, a Silver Star. I watched brothers die for the freedoms we cherish." His words thundered, the hall spellbound in awe. Could one man's story shift the heart of a nation? He paused, the silence deafening, letting his truth sink deep. "When I came home, my wife battled cancer," he continued, his voice steady but raw with grief. "The VA fumbled her paperwork, administrative errors," they shrugged. "By the time they fixed it, she was gone. Predatory lenders stole my home. PTSD ripped away my job. With nowhere left, I became invisible, except to those who saw me as trash to sweep away." The crowd was breathless, gripped by his pain. "But I never forgot my oath to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic," he roared, his voice surging with fire. "What's happening here isn't just harassment, it's a betrayal of America's soul. Justice auctioned to the highest bidder." Could his truth awaken a sleeping giant? As Eli's testimony blazed, Q's team unleashed their masterstroke, a digital dagger to the Shieldman's heart. They breached the group's secret comms, cracking firewalls to seize hours of raw bodycam footage and calls never meant for daylight. On towering screens and the live stream, watched by millions, the ugliness erupted. Kyle and Barnes hurled slurs while scheming vagrant removal. Brick drilled officers to clean house before Falcon Corps audits. Cops cackled about planting evidence to jail the homeless longer. The audience gasped, tears flowed, fury roared. The Shieldman's veneer of respectability shattered into dust. Could this revelation end their tyranny? By nightfall, the Department of Justice launched a federal probe into Riverbrook's police and the Shieldmen network, a seismic shift in the fight for truth. Whistleblowers got immunity offers, Ava battling to shield Jameson, her legal prowess a shield against the storm. The sheriff, scrambling to dodge the scandal's toxic fallout, benched Brick and Kyle, but Brick had vanished into the shadows. He's gone to ground. Q reported in their new HQ, a cozy office above a veteran-run coffee shop downtown. Sources saw him pulling cash from 3 banks yesterday. He's gearing up to disappear. Could Ava snag him before he slipped through the cracks? Can we track him? Ava demanded, her prosecutor's edge razor-sharp, her eyes burning with determination. We're on it. Link said, screens flickering with surveillance feeds, tracking credit card pings and traffic cam captures. He's slick burner phones, cash backroads. Eli and Q shared a glance, heavy with unspoken strategy. He'll reach out to Falcon Core. Eli predicted, his voice grim as a winter storm. He's got too much dirt on them to be left dangling. He'll demand an escape for his silence. Rachel's voice wavered, her eyes wide with fear. Will they save him? Or cut him loose? Could Falcon Core betray its own? The answer came at dawn, a chilling blow that rocked the team. Barnes was found dead in an alley near a cop-frequented bar, tagged an overdose. Ava's team scoured the scene, finding no wire, the body staged post-death. This ain't no overdose. Eli declared, his voice flat but lethal after examining the grim sight. It's a hit. Barnes was about to sing, and they shut him up. Q nodded, grim as death. Falcon slashing loose ends, he said, his voice dark with foreboding. Brick's next if they catch him. The team raced to find Brick before Falcon Core or Feds did. His testimony could unravel it all. Could they save him from his ally's blade? At this razor-sharp moment, reinforcements stormed into Riverbrook like a cavalry charge. Samir wrenched Taleb's modified van screeched to a halt outside their headquarters, brimming with cutting-edge surveillance gear, his mechanic's genius capable of crafting miracles from gears and wires. Deson Echo Rivers rolled in next, his nondescript rental car masking a master spy who could vanish into any crowd, coaxing secrets from stone. Clarissa Doc Holloway arrived last, her medical bags heavy with supplies, her comm a beacon forged in her days as a combat medic, now a PTSD counselor bringing both physical and emotional healing. Their reunion was raw and electric, tight hugs, firm handshakes, the silent language of those who'd faced death together. No words were needed, they came because Eli called, and that was enough. Could this legendary squad seal the fight for justice? Sitrep. Echo barked, his voice snapping to operational mode, all business despite the emotion in his eyes. Eli briefed them with battlefield precision, his words painting a vivid picture, the corruption they'd exposed, the mountain of evidence they'd gathered, the frantic hunt for Brick before he could flee or fall to Falcon Core's blade. We need total coverage. Eli ordered, his voice commanding yet steady. Wrench. Can. You get eyes in the sky. Samir's grin was pure confidence as he tapped a custom case beside him. 3 drones locked and loaded, he declared, his voice brimming with pride. High altitude, thermal imaging, encrypted feeds. Nothing moves in this town without us seeing it. Could Wrench's tech wizardry give them the edge they needed?
Echo.
Eli continued, his gaze sharp.
Tap your contact in the private security world.
Falcon Core has to be using local muscle for their cleanup ops. Echo nodded, his eyes glinting with focus. Already on it, he said, his voice cool and assured. Got 2 names from old Blackwater buddies who've gone corporate. They're holed up in a motel on the north side. Could Echo's shadowy connections uncover Falcon Core's dirty secrets?
Doc.
Eli turned to Holloway, his voice softening but urgent. We may have casualties. Rachel and Q have already been hit. We need medical support on standby. Clarissa's calm was unshakable, her eyes warm with reassurance. I've got everything from bandages to battlefield surgery, she said, her voice steady as a rock. And I've lined up trusted medics at the county hospital if we need more. Could Doc's expertise keep their team whole in the chaos ahead? The team transformed Riverbrook into a fortress of truth, their resolve a blazing light against the darkness. Veterans from nearby towns, inspired by Eli's stand and Rachel's videos, volunteered as security for witnesses, their solidarity a wall of strength. Shop owners, once cowed, hung signs supporting the investigation, a quiet rebellion. Safe houses sprang up, hidden in plain sight. As Eli's old squad integrated, the fight felt like Kandahar, outnumbered but unbreakable. Could this grassroots uprising topple a corporate colossus? 2 days later, a heart-stopping breakthrough electrified the team. Wrench's surveillance drone, a marvel of his mechanical genius, captured grainy but damning footage. Captain Brick slinking into a private airfield under the cloak of night, a bulging duffel bag slung over his shoulder, heavy with what could only be cash. "He's bolting." Echo confirmed, his voice taut with urgency as he reviewed the feed, his spy's instincts razor-sharp. "That plane's tied to a Falcon Core shell company. It's set to lift off at 0400. Eli glanced at his watch, his pulse hammering, less than 3 hours to act. "This is it," he declared, his voice a clarion call, his gaze sweeping over his team's determined faces, old squad and new allies united in a single burning mission. "We end this tonight." Could they seize this fleeting chance to bring Brick to justice? "How do we play it, boss?" Q asked, his fingers already flying across his laptop, pulling up airfield schematics, his eyes alight with tactical focus despite his fractured arm. Ava's voice cut through, sharp and strategic. "We could tip off the feds," she urged, her legal mind racing. "Have them waiting when he lands." Eli's head shook, his expression grim, his combat instincts screaming caution. "Too risky," he countered, his voice low but unyielding. "If Brick spots law enforcement, he'll vanish. And if Falcon Core has moles in federal agencies, as we suspect, they'll tip him off." Rachel's eyes widened, her voice trembling with fear and hope. "So what's the plan?" she asked, her heart pounding. Could they outmaneuver such a slippery foe? Eli's face was a mask of calm resolve, his voice steady as stone. "I go in alone," he said, each word a vow. "One-on-one, me and Brick." Doc's protest was instant, her voice cracking with worry. "That's suicide, Eli," she cried, her medic's heart recoiling. "He's cornered, probably armed."
Elias gaz meter, unilding, a warrior's fire burning bright.
"I'm a combat vet who knows the game," he said, his voice calm but fierce. "Brick's not looking for a fight, he wants to run. I just need to stall him until our Fed contacts roll in." Could Eli face this dragon alone? After a fierce, heart-wrenching debate, they forged a compromise, each word a testament to their trust in Eli. He'd make the first move, with Echo perched in a nearby hangar, his sniper scope a silent guardian ready to strike non-lethally. Wrench would pilot drones, their thermal eyes sweeping the perimeter, while Doc and Q ran ops from a mobile command post half a mile out, their tech a lifeline. Ava would hold federal agents on a tight leash, poised to swarm on her signal. As the team scrambled to prep, Rachel pulled Eli aside, her eyes shimmering with fear, her voice trembling. "Be careful," she pleaded, her heart laid bare. "Brick's got nothing to lose." Eli's expression softened, a rare warmth breaking through his stoic armor. "Those with nothing to lose are the easiest to read," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "They're all about survival, I know that better than anyone." He checked his watch, the seconds ticking like a bomb. It was time. Could this showdown end the Shieldman's reign? The private airfield lay hushed under a canopy of glittering stars, a lonely concrete island amid rolling farmland, its silence heavy with the weight of destiny. A single runway stretched like a dark scar, lit by faint blue lights that seemed to hover in the void. The air carried the sharp tang of jet fuel and damp earth as Eli moved through the shadows, a ghost forged in Afghanistan's crucible, every sense screaming alert. "Wrench status," he whispered into his comm, his voice barely a breath, his heart steady despite the stakes. "One heat signature in the hangar office." Wrench's voice crackled softly in his ear, cool and precise. "Another's rolling in from the access road, vehicles creeping, no lights. Gotta be our guy." "Echo, you set?" Eli asked, his voice taut, trusting his sniper's eagle eye. "Locked in." Echo replied, his comm a steel thread. "Clear shots to the hangar and runway. If he twitches wrong, I can drop him without killing." Could their precision outwit Brick's desperation? Eli crouched behind a fuel truck, its bulk shielding him, his eyes locked on the hangar's small office where a restless figure paced, likely the pilot, itching for his passenger. Headlights flickered briefly on the access road, then vanished. A car door clicked shut, gravel crunching under hurried steps. Captain Brick emerged from the dark, a duffel bag slung over his shoulder, its weight pulling at his frame. Even from afar, Eli saw the man's unraveling, his jerky glances, his tense stride screaming panic. Brick was a cornered animal. Eli waited, heart-pounding, until Brick was halfway to the hangar, then stepped into the open, his voice cutting through the night like a blade. Going somewhere, Captain? Could this confrontation end the chase? Brick froze, his hand darting toward his waistband, instincts betraying his fear. Don't. Eli warned, his voice low and lethal, his stance unshakable. My team's got you covered from every angle. This ends tonight. Brick's face, lit by the runway's ghostly glow, twisted with venom. Turner, he spat, his voice dripping with scorn.
Should we known you de crawl out of the gutte?
His hand fell away, but his eyes burned with defiance. You never quit, do you? Could Brick's bravado mask his crumbling empire? I learned to keep going in Kandahar. Eli said, his voice steady, a warrior's calm forged in fire. Where'd you learn to betray your oath to serve? Brick's laugh was harsh, a jagged edge of desperation. Spare me the sermon, he sneered, his voice cracking. You think anyone cares about justice or homeless vets? It's all money and power, always was. Eli's eyes narrowed, his voice a low growl. So you justified beating heroes, faking reports, driving them out like trash? Could such betrayal ever be excused? Brick's sneer widened, his voice dripping with contempt. You're a broken relic, Turner. We cleaned up. Property values soared, the town thrived, business pure and simple. Eli's voice dropped, intense and unyielding. You sent men to die for profit, he said, his words a searing indictment. I watched them die for people. That's where we part ways. They stood locked in a silent clash, two men divided by a moral chasm too vast to cross. Then Brick's eyes glinted, cunning replacing scorn.
What do you want?
Cash. He patted his bag. Take half.
Start fresh.
A guy like you could. I don't want your dirty money. Eli cut him off, his voice a whip crack. I want justice for every soul you crushed. Could Eli's stand shatter Brick's arrogance? Justice. Brick mocked, his voice venomous. There's no justice, only winners and losers.
I'm not losing.
With a viper's speed, he yanked a pistol from his jacket. But before he could aim, floodlights blazed, searing the airfield, blinding them both. Federal agents. Drop your weapon. A voice boomed over a loudspeaker. Brick swung his gun toward Eli, panic overriding sense. Echo's shot cracked from the hangar, a perfect hit to Brick's shoulder. The captain screamed, his pistol clattering to the tarmac, pain twisting his face. Could justice finally claim its due? Federal agents swarmed like a tidal wave, guns drawn, converging with relentless precision. Ava strode from a vehicle, flanked by senior agents, her face a mask of fierce resolve. I thought we agreed on my signal. Eli said, a faint grin softening his tone, relief flooding his chest. Plans shifted when he drew. Ava shot back, her voice sharp but warm. No way I'd let him shoot you. Agents cuffed Brick, cataloging his duffel, $500,000 in cash, fake passports, a flash drive likely packed with leverage against Falcon Corps. Captain David Brick, the lead agent barked, his voice formal. You're under arrest for civil rights violations, conspiracy, extortion, and attempted assault.
B.
Rick, clutching his bleeding shoulder, glared at Eli with raw hatred. This won't hold, he spat as they dragged him away.
Falcon corrones juge, senator.
Could his threats still carry weight? Eli watched, his face impassive, his voice a quiet vow Brick couldn't hear. The war starts when you decide some lives don't matter, he murmured. It ends when justice stands, no matter the cost. The Fed's investigation surged forward, fueled by Ava's mountain of evidence. 3 days later, a federal courthouse in Pittsburgh became the battleground, national news cameras swarming, the air electric with anticipation. Ava stood tall in the packed courtroom, her voice a fiery sword as she unveiled the Shieldman's horrors. Hundreds of pages of abuse, collusion, cover-ups, Rachel's footage, Q's data, victims' testimonies painting a searing portrait of corporate-backed cruelty. This isn't just Riverbrook's shame, she declared, her passion shaking the room. The Shield men plague at least 7 states, preying on veterans, minorities, the poor, all to feed corporate land grabs masked as progress. Could her case spark a national reckoning? The judge, a formidable civil rights veteran, listened with steely focus, her ruling swift and seismic. She slapped injunctions on all Shieldmen chapters, ordered a nationwide probe into Falcon Core, the courtroom erupting in gasps. Media frenzy followed, anchors ran specials, Senate hearings loomed, public fury swelled as more victims spoke out. Eli became an unwilling beacon, veterans groups begging for his voice at rallies, advocates seeking his support, a senator personally urging him to testify before Congress. "I'm no politician," he told Q, exhaustion etching his face as he dodged another interview. "Just a soldier fixing a wrong." Q's eyes gleamed with pride, his voice warm. "That's what they need, man," he said, rebuilding his tech setup. "Not suits or stars, just a guy standing tall, no matter the price." Could Eli's quiet strength inspire millions? The cost was crushing. Eli had no home, crashing in a vet spare room, his PTSD flaring under the strain, sleepless nights haunted by hypervigilance. He grieved for those lost to the Shieldmen, like Thomas, frozen in a ditch after their heartless purge. Doc Holloway saw his pain, her counselor's heart guiding her as she sat beside him in their HQ. "You're carrying them all," she said softly, her voice a gentle anchor. "Every vet who didn't make it, every soul brick targeted. You can't save them all, Eli." His gaze fell to his scarred hands, his voice raw. "I know," he said, grief choking him. "But I'm still mourning those I couldn't." Could he find peace amidst such loss?
Grief metteurs.
Doc said, her eyes warm with empathy. "But so does what you've done. This movement's bigger than Riverbrook, it'll save thousands."
Eli nodded slowly, a faint spark flickering.
"Sarah would have loved that," he murmured, his late wife's memory a quiet light. "She said my stubbornness would save me." Doc's smile was soft. "She was right," she said. "And it's saving others now." Could Sarah's faith guide him through this storm? The next morning, a congressional summons landed, urging Eli to speak on veteran homelessness and police reform. He balked, his grief raw, craving the shadows. But Doc and Rachel's heartfelt pleas broke through. "This isn't about you," Rachel said, her voice fierce with love. "It's for those still voiceless." Eli relented, his heart heavy but resolute. In D.C., he stood before Congress, a donated suit framing his soldier's bearing, his voice a fiery testament. "I'm no hero but a witness," he began, his words searing the packed chamber. "A witness to veterans abandoned by broken systems, to corruption prizing profit over dignity, to ordinary folks risking all for truth." He demanded housing reform, police oversight, whistleblower protections, naming 23 Riverbrook veterans lost to the streets. "Their deaths weren't fate," he roared, emotion cracking his voice. "They were choices, by people who valued some lives less, by systems that turned away." Could his words reshape a nation's soul? When he finished, the room erupted in a standing ovation. Even cynical legislators who had initially attended only for the publicity were visibly moved. The committee chairman immediately called for emergency funding for veteran support programs and promised swift legislative action on police reform. Back in Riverbrook, changes were already taking place. The Red Rail Diner reopened under new management, the previous owner having been implicated in collaborating with the Shieldmen to report homeless disturbances. Rachel was offered her old job back, but she had found her calling elsewhere. "I'm opening a non-profit cafe," she told Eli during a video call, her excitement palpable even through the screen. "We'll employ homeless veterans, provide job training, and serve as a community hub for support services. Would you help me paint the walls when you get back?" Eli smiled, a rare, genuine expression that transformed his weathered face. "I'd be honored." Jameson, after providing crucial testimony against Brick and several other Shieldmen, entered a rehabilitation program for the trauma he'd endured during his police training. Later, he joined Ava's team as a full-time investigator, using his inside knowledge to help identify and expose corrupt practices in other departments. The Falcon Core scandal continued to expand. Their CEO was indicted on multiple federal charges. Their stock plummeted as investors fled. Class action lawsuits were filed on behalf of communities targeted by their gentrification schemes. And throughout it all, the movement that had begun with a confrontation at a small-town diner continued to grow, a grassroots campaign for dignity, justice, and second chances that transcended political divisions and united people across the country. One evening, exactly 6 months after the incident at the Red Rail Diner, Eli walked through the same snowy street where his story had begun. But now, instead of the worn military jacket and frayed pants, he wore a sharp charcoal suit donated by a veteran support group. His posture was upright, his gaze clear, his steps purposeful. As he passed a young homeless veteran huddled in a doorway, a man recently returned from overseas, still shell-shocked and disoriented, Eli paused. He knelt beside the young man, meeting his eyes with understanding few others could offer. "I've been where you are," he said softly, extending his hand. "And I can show you a way forward if you're willing to take it." 1 year after Eli Turner first walked into the Red Rail Diner, Riverbrook had transformed. The small town that had once systematically persecuted its homeless population now stood as a national model for veteran support and community integration. A large crowd gathered in the morning sunshine for the dedication of the Turner Veterans Community Center, a renovated factory building that now housed transitional apartments, mental health services, job training facilities, and a medical clinic specifically designed for veterans' needs. Q led the ceremony from his wheelchair, his health fully restored after the injuries sustained during the police raid. Children from the center's after-school program surrounded him, wearing T-shirts emblazoned with Veterans for Justice across the front. "Today we celebrate not just a building," Q addressed the assembled crowd, "but the birth of a movement. A year ago, one man refused to be silenced. Today, thousands stand with him, demanding dignity and justice for those who served." In the front row sat General Whitaker, now serving as a special advisor to the President's Commission on Veteran Homelessness. Beside him, Ava smiled proudly, her work on the Shieldmen case having culminated in landmark legislation named the Dignity Act, providing unprecedented protections for homeless individuals nationwide. Eli stood slightly apart from the crowd, uncomfortable with being the center of attention, but deeply moved by what his stand had accomplished. Children played freely in what had once been an abandoned lot, now transformed into a vibrant community garden. Veterans who had previously hidden in the shadows now walked openly through town, their service honored rather than exploited. After the ceremony, Rachel approached him, camera in hand. The past year had seen her transition from waitress to full-time documentarian, her powerful storytelling bringing human faces to systemic issues. "The premiere is tomorrow," she reminded him with barely contained excitement. The theaters completely sold out. Her feature film, The Veteran Who Wouldn't Bow, chronicled Eli's story, Ava's legal battle, and the fall of the Shieldmen. It had already won awards at 3 film festivals and had been picked up for national distribution, ensuring that what had happened in Riverbrook would never be forgotten. "You'll be there, right?" Rachel pressed when Eli didn't immediately respond. "Wouldn't miss it," he assured her, though the thought of watching his life on screen made him deeply uncomfortable.
Your work matters, Rachel.
"It's keeping the pressure on systems that need changing." Her face softened. "I couldn't have done it without you." Across town, in a sleek office building that had once housed Falcon Corps' regional headquarters, Ava was launching a new initiative. Turner's Law would provide specialized legal support to wrongly accused or targeted homeless veterans, with a particular focus on small towns where such abuses often went unchallenged. "We're not just fighting individual cases," she explained to her team of passionate young attorneys. "We're changing the culture. We're making it impossible for corruption to hide behind badges or boardroom doors." The impact of their work had already spread far beyond Riverbrook. In the past year, 11 Shieldmen chapters had been disbanded nationwide. 8 police chiefs had resigned or been indicted. Falcon Corps' predatory practices had been exposed in congressional hearings, leading to new regulations on corporate development in vulnerable communities. Doc Holloway, who had remained in Riverbrook after the initial crisis, opened a clinic specifically dedicated to PTSD recovery and mental health support for homeless veterans. She named it Malik's Hope, in honor of Eli's fallen friend from Kandahar. "Trauma doesn't have to be a life sentence," she told her patients. "With the right support, even the deepest wounds can heal." Through donations and a community fundraiser, Eli now lived in a modest home near the Veteran Center. Though simple, it represented stability he hadn't known since before his wife's death. Large windows let in abundant light, and a small garden in the backyard gave him a sense of purpose and peace. On a shelf by his window, he kept a wooden box containing dog tags, not just his own, but those of veterans who had died on Riverbrook streets before the Shieldmen were exposed. Each morning, he acknowledged them, a private ritual of remembrance and renewal. One afternoon, as spring buds began to appear on the trees outside his window, Eli carefully added another set of tags to the box, those belonging to Officer Barnes. Even monsters were once boys, he murmured, closing the lid gently. He had obtained the tags from Barnes's sister, who had reached out after learning the full story of her brother's involvement with the Shield men. The conversation had been difficult but healing for both of them, a reminder that even in the darkest stories, humanity could be reclaimed. The ripples of change continued to spread. Rachel received a letter from a veteran in Texas. I saw your film. I finally spoke out about what happened to me. The investigation starts next week. Thank you for being brave. Similar messages arrived almost daily now, from veterans finding their voices, from communities questioning their police departments, from ordinary citizens refusing to look away from injustice. What had begun as one man's stand for dignity had become a national conversation about who deserves protection under the law. At the local high school, Eli reluctantly agreed to speak to students about civic responsibility and moral courage. Despite his discomfort with public speaking, he recognized the importance of reaching young minds before cynicism and apathy could take root. You don't need a uniform or a title to make a difference, he told the assembled teenagers. You just need to recognize your own worth and the worth of every person around you. After his presentation, a troubled teen approached him hesitantly. You think people like me can be heroes too? The boy asked, his eyes downcast, his posture defensive in the way of someone who expected rejection. Eli regarded him thoughtfully. You already are, he said with quiet certainty. You just haven't heard your story yet. The last Shieldmen chapter was officially disbanded on a crisp autumn day, almost 18 months after Eli's confrontation with Barnes and Kyle. Department of Justice reforms had been passed, implementing strict oversight for police interactions with homeless individuals and mandatory reporting of all use-of-force incidents. The Veterans Community Center received a national honor for innovation in social services. General Whitaker, watching the ceremony broadcast from his D.C. office, felt his eyes fill with unexpected tears of pride. The young sergeant who had saved his life in Kandahar was still saving others in ways neither of them could have imagined. On a chilly evening in late November, Eli returned to the Red Rail Diner for the first time since his arrest. The place had been renovated, its atmosphere warmer and more welcoming under the new ownership. He chose the same stool at the counter where he had sat that snowy night nearly 2 years earlier. A young waitress approached with a coffee pot. Can I get you something to eat, sir? She asked with genuine warmth. The special, please, Eli replied, the sense of déjà vu both painful and healing. When she returned with his meal, she set it before him with a smile. It's on the house, sir. Thank you for everything you've done for our town. Eli started to protest, but the sincerity in her eyes stopped him. Instead, he simply nodded his thanks and began to eat, a simple meal made extraordinary by the context of how far things had come. After dinner, Eli made one final stop at the newly completed memorial wall inside the community center. He carefully placed a framed photograph of Malik Johnson, his best friend, who had died in the ambush in Kandahar. The photo joined dozens of others, creating a mosaic of lives connected by service, sacrifice, and finally remembrance. Children ran past in the corridor, their laughter filling the air as a tutoring program wrapped up for the evening. Volunteers chatted as they prepared for the next day's job fair. A therapy group for veterans with PTSD shared coffee in the lounge, their faces reflecting both past pain and present healing. Eli rested his hand on Malik's photo, the glass cool beneath his fingers. We're finally home, he whispered, the words meant for his friend, but encompassing all they had fought for, all they had lost, and all that had unexpectedly been gained. As he stepped outside into the fading light, Eli took a deep breath of the crisp evening air. For the first time in years, the weight of grief and rage that had driven him no longer pressed quite so heavily on his shoulders. In its place was something quieter but more enduring, a sense of purpose fulfilled, of wounds slowly healing, of peace hard-won but finally within reach. The sun set over Riverbrook, casting long shadows across streets that had once been battlegrounds and were now pathways to redemption. Eli Turner walked toward home, his step steady, his head high, his heart at last beginning to find its way back to the light. Eli Turner's story is a gut punch of raw courage and unyielding hope that leaves my heart both shattered and soaring. His stand against the Shieldmen's cruelty, born from a single act of defiance in a small-town diner, is a blazing testament to the power of one man's truth. The way he carried the weight of his fallen comrades, his lost wife, and every invisible veteran crushed by a heartless system, yet still found the strength to fight, moves me to tears. Rachel's bravery, Ava's fierce justice, and the old squad's unwavering loyalty weave a tapestry of human resilience that's nothing short of inspiring. The transformation of Riverbrook, from a place of persecution to a beacon of healing, feels like a miracle, proof that even the darkest battles can birth light. Eli's quiet compassion, offering a hand to a struggling vet, and his ritual of honoring the fallen with dog tags, stirs a deep ache for those lost but also a fierce pride in what's been won. This story isn't just about one town, it's a rallying cry for dignity and justice everywhere, a reminder that even broken hearts can spark revolutions. Could there be a more powerful call to stand up and fight for what's right?